All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy this new content, and let's re-engage together.
You now make a point of that's an investment criteria for you.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. It's just.
All right, you're gonna hear that name. If you're just coming in on right now, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We are diving in deep about BlackRock. If you don't know who BlackRock is, they the ones that own the whole music industry, and they own the ingredients that you're putting in your food in order to cook.
You have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. We're going to have to force change.
This is a company most people have never heard of, and this company quite literally owns the world. Most US banks are controlled by BlackRock. BlackRock owns all the major pharmaceutical companies. BlackRock owns most of the mainstream media, and BlackRock oversees roughly 10% of all stocks traded worldwide. And this company is now taking over governments. All of this has allowed BlackRock to amass $10 trillion in assets. Yes, trillion. BlackRock is worth half of America's total GDP. It's so crazy that the US and Chinese government now rely on BlackRock to escape recessions, with BlackRock's founder and CEO now sitting on the boards of the influential Council on Foreign Relations and the World Economic Forum. In the words of Henry Kissinger, whoever controls the money controls the world. And
Yo, that's crazy. This whole time we thought the Rothschilds had all this power. We thought the Rothschilds was the ones to watch out for. It's the BlackRock.
History has had this much global influence.
In the developed countries, the big winners are countries that have shrinking populations.
The company that owns the world, managing assets worth $6.3 trillion. These are assets that belong to their clients, mainly the pension funds of ordinary people, teachers, police officers, nurses, and many more. And that's just the beginning. BlackRock has also developed a software platform called Aladdin to perform risk analysis for its clients. It receives sensitive data from banks, insurance companies, and other important institutions. Through Aladdin, BlackRock has insights about the management of financial assets worth another $20 trillion. BlackRock also has shares and voting rights in many of the biggest European companies, in sectors such as energy, oil and gas, transportation, food, and of course, finance. The company holds public debt in the form of bonds and has real estate interests. Our Rock, you see, wears many hats.
Yeah, I am. I decide people's fates. Every day, I literally decide how somebody's life is going to be shaped.
That's so powerful. I love it.
Yeah, it's... And you know, the whole thing of like domination.
That's crazy. Y'all hear him? Yo, this is how these workers be thinking about stuff. Check it out. Check it out.
In my travels seeing governmental leaders, I talk about the need for more public-private investing, whether it is in infrastructure, sustainability, whatever you want to say, power grids. What I see...
Pause and back it up 3 seconds. And again, let me be very clear. He controls 88% of the investment money in the world. That's on record. He says he'll use it to control your behavior. He's like, gee, the big corporations want to give you money so the economy turns back on. But he doesn't tell the people here, but you've got to do with it exactly what we say. It's got to be digital, and you've got to buy what we tell you can buy. That's beyond fascism. That's a totally technocratic, technocracy system. Tracks everything you do, controls your money, tells you where you can use it, can cut it off anytime they want, and you got to spend it with them.
6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, 60%. The biggest cause is chronic disease. $4.3 trillion a year that we're spending on chronic disease. And who's making money from that? The pharmaceutical companies. And who owns all those pharmaceutical companies? Yeah, BlackRock. Oh, and those pharmaceutical companies are causing it with, some of the bad medicines they give us, and then they're reaping the harvest of all that chronic disease. The processed food companies, which bought up the tobacco companies, Kraft went to work for Philip, became a subsidiary of Philip Morris, etc. They brought 10,000 scientists, many of them from the tobacco industry, to make processed foods addictive and to make them so that they don't fill you. And we now have 1,000 ingredients in our processed foods in this country that are illegal in Europe. Who owns all of those processed food companies? BlackRock.
Let's say you're BlackRock. You're in control of 40% of the investable assets globally. You're heavily invested in literally every aspect of life. The food industry, medical industry, weapon industry, transportation, the media, everything. By the way, this isn't a conspiracy. This is public data that anyone can find. So once you have all this power and you need to increase demand in order to keep the economy going, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to create a crisis. Because you cannot have a $90 billion weapon industry without a war. You cannot have demand for green energy without a climate crisis. You cannot sell a vaccine without a pandemic. And you cannot create media traffic without drama. It's an entire ecosystem controlled from the upper class, and it's no coincidence we're in a perpetual state of crisis.
It's not just idiots like BlackRock and Vanguard. They actually own the music industry and control the music.
Wait. The investment houses of BlackRock and Vanguard, they own the music industry?
Absolutely. From Sony Music Group, they're the most invested in the music industry. They're the most, through Viacom, they own BET, MTV, VH1. They're in control of the music industry. And they also own the overwhelming majority of stock in the private prison industry.
Literally the certain people who own the labels own private prison. It's not about making somebody write the lyrics. It's about being there as guardrails to make sure certain songs make it through and certain songs don't.
Rothschild claimed to be Jewish. Not the nationality of a Jew, but Jew in terms of belief in God. And a follower of divine revelation. But was Mr. Rothschild a moral man? Here's a man that had 5 sons. And he sent his 5 sons into 5 countries. One son went to England, one son to France, one to Austria, one to Italy, and another remained in Germany with the father. And from these sons, and the money that these sons had, they worked and maneuvered and manipulated until they gained control of the central banks of England, France, Austria, Italy, and Germany. These privately owned central banks became the printer of the money and the extenders of credit of that particular nation.
In 1917, the Rothschilds, the trillion-dollar family that invented modern-day banking, used their money, power, and influence to strike a secret deal with the British government. That deal eventually led to the creation of the country of Israel. Lord Walter Rothschild, a man who could change the world with the snap of his finger. And in 1917, the British government sent Walter an official letter promising to do everything within their power to provide land for the creation of Israel. That letter redesigned the map of the world. And if you need proof, we have a copy of that letter.
November the 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
So it's possibly the most famous letter in modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild.
That letter, nicknamed the Balfour Declaration, is proof that it was the Rothschild family that created Israel.
The fact is, 52% of the New York Fed is owned by these 8 families. It's the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Goldman Sachs, Lehman's, Lazards, Warburgs, Kuhn-Loebs, and Israel Moses Seifs. And the latter family, that goes back to the Genoese bankers, you know, when they first moved into Europe. And these are just really old families. And you know the saying, money begets more money. You know, you got to have money to make money. Well, guess what? These people had money in the 16th century, whatever. And so, you know, many people estimate that the Rothschilds, the richest of these families, are worth over $100 trillion.
The international banking cartel is a consortium of about 15 to 20 to 25 international banks of large magnitude with large amounts of political influence. And they are essentially the ones who control the private central banks of the world, because in most countries, United States, Britain, Germany, Japan, and so on down the line, the central bank is a privately controlled institution, even if it's not always, formally speaking, privately owned.
The control that these banking families exert over the global economy cannot be overstated and is quite intentionally shrouded in secrecy. The corporate media arm is quick to discredit any information exposing this private central banking cartel as conspiracy theory, yet the facts remain.
And what my book is about is how they've established this total monopoly over the three most valuable commodities in the world: guns, drugs, and oil. And then, worse yet, they've taken over the central banks of every country, not just the Federal Reserve, but you know, the Bank of England, the Bundesbank, the Bank of France, Bank of Australia. I mean, you name it.
So in 1945, the Rockefellers co-founded the United Nations, and it was John D. Rockefeller Jr. that actually bought the 17 acres for the UN building. Nelson Rockefeller chose the architect, which introduced the international style. The family funded the UN building. That's how much they were involved. And they came in with 1948, their statement of purpose. Now, this was the founding reason. This hasn't changed. It says people must be made to feel that their own security, freedom, and prosperity, yes, their own survival, depend on the creation in our time of a world rule of law. They must be made to believe that the establishment of a world government is more urgent than a maintenance of a high domestic standard, and as if not more practical than the pursuit of a deceptive security by full military preparedness. And that was a statement by Edwin Rabinowitz, a Rockefeller client servant.
For over 5 years, the mysterious depopulation predictions on Deagle.com were regularly updated. But after the 2020 lockdowns, this page was removed from the website, but can still be found archived on the Wayback Machine. In their recent article, uncovering the CIA and Rockefeller Foundation's role in the depopulation forecast released by Deagle, the expose connects the dots that many of us have assumed existed. Declassified FOIA documents from the 1970s reveal Deagle's direct communication with Stansfield Turner, the director of the CIA at the time. In 1976, Dr. Edwin Deagle moved to New York to become deputy director of the International Relations Program at the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation was created on May 14, 1913, just a few months after the Rockefeller family helped set up the Federal Reserve banking system, which gave them unlimited funds while enslaving future generations with debt. The Rockefeller Foundation funded eugenics programs that decided who should live and who should die. They outlawed natural medicine and fuel, including one of America's #1 cash crops, hemp, and replaced it all with chemical compounds derived from their oil companies' toxic waste. The Rockefeller Foundation created the United Nations and have their tentacles in NGOs throughout the Western world. In 2019, they funded Event 201, the blueprint for the COVID lockdowns that were executed weeks later.
We have the Royal Bank of Scotland. We have HSBC, that's the old Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. Lloyds Bank, TSB, that has absorbed HBOS, Building Society. That is followed then by Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, UBS, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank and Westdeutsche Landesbank of Germany, Société Générale of France, the Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi UJF, Norin Chukin of Japan, Royal Bank of Canada, and Rabobank of the Netherlands. Now that group, 15, 16 banks, that is essentially the heart of the cartel.
So you're HSBC, one of the biggest banks in the world. You are so big and powerful that if you were a country, you would be the 5th biggest world power, outranking the United Kingdom. See, the great thing about being a bank is that everyone needs banking services. Moms, dads, terrorists, drug traffickers, sketchy shell companies, everyone. The problem is countries don't like it when banks work with people they deem as criminals. So as a bank with the power of a country, you're presented with 2 very different paths on how to operate. Path number 1, you properly vet every client and refuse to let criminals use your bank, thus leaving money on the table. Or you can take path number 2. You happily work with terrorists, drug traffickers, illegal diamond dealers, and other sketchy characters because they are your biggest customers. They deposit giant sums of money, which you can then use to lend out, charge transaction fees on to make even more money. So HSBC, which path do you take?
American authorities discovered that the Sinaloa cartel moved $881 million through HSBC accounts.
Said HSBC had made a string of errors, including inadequate monitoring of money laundering and terrorist financing scenarios.
HSBC's compliance history, as examined today, is unacceptable.
Wow, this was crazy. So the BlackRocks are the ones running all this stuff and got all these banks working for them. Hit that like button on the way in, hit it on the way out. Share this video. Let's try to help more people wake up and find the Hustle Man 3.0. Thanks for stopping by. Stay tuned for the next one. We out.